Okay, this is Michael from Blue Sky Bio. I'd like to welcome everybody who's joining us, whether you're participating directly in the webinar or if you're going to be watching it. The way that this is going to work is I'm going to be giving over a training session to the participants of the Hangout. Of course, if you have any questions, please just speak up during the presentation. And if anybody who's watching who might have questions, you could type them into the QA box. And we'll address the questions from there as well. Everybody should also enter their details into the webinar attendance form so that we could send you the CE credit. It was sent via email, and it also appears as a link under the video viewing boxes. So for those of you who may or may not be aware, the Blue Sky Plan is a free treatment planning software. It has a lot of different functionality and features built into it. It could be used for treatment planning and computer-guided surgical cases. The software could accommodate all implant systems, and surgical guides could be fabricated for all guided surgical kits. Obviously, we are an implant company, and we recommend checking out our implants on our website at blueskybio.com. The software can be downloaded from there as well. As part of the software, we also have the option of doing guided surgery with a direct cut drilling solution. You could use whatever drilling solution that you have, but if you don't have one and you're looking for one, then Blue Sky Bio has a direct cut solution. Good option as well. We have a very large variety of metal cylinders that could be put into the surgical guides. We have options to fabricate surgical guides both in office and in lab by ordering the surgical guides through a full-service dental lab. So what we're talking about is not just the software, we're talking about a full system that works together, that we have drills, we have the software, we have the surgical guides, we have different surgical guide solutions, and like I said, it could accommodate, the surgical guides could accommodate different implant systems and different guided surgical kits as well. The purpose of the training session today is to help you become more familiar and comfortable with the Blue Sky Plan treatment planning software. Generally, an hour is a good amount of time to get somebody from a starting point to the point where they're using the software pretty comfortably and can place implants and do the things that we're going to be discussing today. The webinar is going to be recorded as well, so it's going to be live on YouTube once the training session is over. We also have a help file that has a lot of information built into it that's accessible via the software at Help, Show Help. In addition, we have short feature-focused videos on our website that could be accessed. And of course, if with any questions or to set up a personal training session, we could be contacted with any questions directly. Some of the topics that we're going to be discussing today during the session include loading DICOM images. We're going to be explaining briefly what DICOM images are and how to go about using them. We're going to be discussing the purpose of the panoramic curve, how to draw it. We also have some new functionality with the panoramic curve that we've implemented, an intelligent automatic panoramic curve functionality, so we'll be discussing that as well. We'll be discussing how to draw nerves in the software, a different screen layout, so you'll feel comfortable navigating the screen and looking at the different views, including the 3D view. Placing implants, doing measurements, importing models. We'll be discussing different tips and tricks regarding the functionality, and we'll be discussing some new features that we have in the software. So let's get started. If you have any questions, just jump right in. Okay. To start a new case with the software, we go to File, New Project. We're going to discard what we have here. The software has different options of shortcuts that go across the top for the desktop, documents, and downloads. You could hit whatever shortcut you want and the software will take you there. If we're loading a case located on the desktop, for example, then we can navigate to there. We could go to our case, And here we have the option of selecting the folder or selecting a particular DICOM images. Either one is fine. The software will automatically load it into the case. And if you have a CD or if you have a hierarchy of different DICOM folders, then you could select the folder on the top of the hierarchy, and the software will search the hierarchy to load the DICOM files. We'll see that in just a minute. A DICOM file, essentially what a CT scan is the process of taking many 2D images around a single point of rotation, which would be the patient. So if you look at a DICOM set, for example, usually a DICOM set, an uncompressed DICOM set, has a long list of files, each one being an image. And when you load it into the software processes all the different 2D images and creates our different views, our 3D view and our other 2D views as well. You're also able to load the DICOM simply by opening up the folder on your computer and double-clicking the DICOM set or the DICOM file. That will automatically launch the software and load the DICOM set. Now, the DICOM files, DICOM is the industry standard for CT scans. Every CT scanner out there could save images as a DICOM and could do the export as the DICOM, and they could be loaded into the software. So the software can handle a CT scan from all CT scan machines. If you're using a scan center or you have your own CT scanner, just make sure it's saved in DICOM format, do the export to DICOM, and then it can be imported into the software. The software can import either compressed DICOMs, which is a single file that contains everything together, or the multi-file DICOMs that we're viewing right now, the long list of DICOMs that we just mentioned. And the software can even load a case directly from a zip file. If you have them zipped into a folder, you don't need to unzip it, just select the folder and select the OK button. Once the folder is selected, the software will scan the folders, scan the hierarchy, or scan the CD, and it will show up on the left-hand side of the screen all the different DICOM sets that's found. In this situation, we loaded one particular DICOM set, so we see one that shows up there. If there would be multiple ones, then we'd see a list of different horizontal rows, each one being its own DICOM set. You simply click on the one that you want and press the OK button, or you could double-click it, and the software will input the DICOMs into the software. Now, the next step before we finish loading them is we're able to define the field of view. Okay, so you could grab any of the margins or borders and drag them inwards to define the field of view. The reason that's done is twofold. First of all, you want to maximize in the different views, you want to maximize the relevant field of view. So you don't want to have extra parts of the patient that's not necessary showing up there. Also, it makes the case smaller, it loads less data, it makes the case smaller, easier for your computer to process, easier to save, to transfer, to store. So there's really no need to load any extra information. What you see with the blue circles and arrows here is if you want to adjust the orientation of the patient. If the patient was scanned at an angle and you want to adjust the orientation, you could grab any of the blue circles and grab and drag it, and it will adjust the orientation of the patient. So once we have the orientation set, and once we have the borders set with our field of view, we go ahead and press OK. The software loads it. And we have the case showing up in the software. Now I'm going to run through the different views very quickly just so you know what they are, and then we're going to go into each one in detail after that. What we're looking at in the bottom right is our panoramic view. It's showing us vertical slices of the patient. We're able to move that buccolingual, and we'll get into that functionality soon. The bottom left is our 3D view. That's obviously showing us the 3D image of the patient. The top left are vertical slices that are going buccolingual. And the top middle view is our axial view that's showing us horizontal slices stacked like a deck of cards. And the top right view is our tangential view. It will show us 360 degrees around any location or around an implant. Okay. Now, once a case is loaded, the first thing that you want to do or confirm is that the panoramic curve, which is the curve that I'm moving my mouse over right now, is properly aligned in the axial view. Until recently, the software would create a curve. It wouldn't be placed very accurately. It would be there, and then you can modify the placement either by grabbing any of the squares along the curve and just moving it, or by creating your own curve. Creating your own curve could be done as well. What we've just implemented, and we're going to be announcing shortly, is that the software now automatically places the panoramic curve intelligently. Okay, so the curve is placed, you could see here, it's placed along the mandible automatically as it should be. In addition, you have the option here to drop down and choose the second jaw, or to define a custom one. So in our situation where we have two jaws, we could switch to the maxilla, and we have the curve that's defined there automatically as well. So we could toggle back between our two different jaws. The panoramic curve is correct and done automatically in both of them. And if we wanted to create another custom curve, maybe in the area of the occlusion, we could select the relevant slice that we want. We could fine-tune the placement of the curve, and it will be saved as our custom curve in the software as well. We've also added in just now the functionality to lock the curve, so that while you're treatment planning or doing manipulation, you're not going to accidentally move the panoramic curve around. To respond to a question that came in, the process of defining the field of view can only be done once while the case is loading. You can't redefine the field of view once the case has been loaded without restarting the case. We have other functionality in the software that allows you to cut out areas of the 3D view, or to zoom in, obviously, or to focus on a particular area. But the field of view can't be redefined once the case is already loaded. Okay, Gloria and Michael, are you guys with me? Do you have any questions until now?
So far, so good.
Okay, perfect. So we just discussed the panoramic. The purpose of the panoramic is that it affects our other views. The bottom panoramic view is affected by the placement of the curve. You could watch, if I throw off the curve, you could watch how it affects the panoramic view. Okay? It also affects our cross-sections view, that as you're going around to look at those vertical slices, it's running along the curve. So you could think of the curve as kind of like a track that dictates the positioning of the other views. Now, if we're going to discuss drawing a nerve a little bit later, but connected to the panoramic, you can also manipulate the panoramic curve to help accentuate the nerves. Okay, like I'm doing right now. If you can't see the nerve clearly, besides being able to flip through the panoramic slices, which moves the entire curve, buccal or lingual, you're able to move the points on the curve to accentuate the nerve. Okay, so that's our panoramic curve. And we're going to start going through the different views more in detail now. So once the DICOMS are loaded, you defined your field of view, your panoramic curve is placed automatically for you now. So now you're really ready to start analyzing the case and to start with your treatment planning. So we're going to go into the different views more in detail, and we're also going to be discussing some of the mouse functionality that we have that controls the different functionality in the software. So let's actually start with the mouse functionality. And it works pretty much the same way in all the different views. The 3D view is slightly different, and we'll get to there a little bit later. But you're able to zoom in and to zoom out by holding down your right mouse button and moving the mouse forwards or backwards, and that will zoom in or zoom out. You're able to grab the image by holding down the wheel of your mouse, grabbing and dragging it, and that will move the image around. And you're able to left click. Wherever you left click, you could see the multicolored lines jump to that location. We're going to discuss how these lines represent what we're viewing in the other images, in the other views. But wherever you left click, the lines go to that location, and all the other views adjust themselves accordingly to show you that position of the anatomy. Okay, so that's our mouse functionality. Again, the zoom in and zoom out with the right mouse button. You could grab the image by holding down the wheel and moving it, and you could left click, and that will focus on the particular location. You can also go through the slices by using the wheel of your mouse. And as we mentioned earlier, what we're looking at essentially is many 2D images are being processed by the software and put together. So when we're going through a particular view and going through the slices, we're going through those images. Okay? What we're viewing now in the 2D view is a 1 millimeter thick slice at a particular location, and we're able to look at the different slices at the different locations. In the panoramic view, the bottom right view that we're looking at, we're discussing, there's a functionality as well to not just view the 1 millimeter slice, but you could switch to a composite view, which will show you the slices together, and it looks more like an X-ray view that you might be more familiar with looking at. Now, the field of view for the composite is defined between the inner and the outer panoramic curves. Okay, when we switch to the slice view, we have one yellow curve that's showing us the location of the slice that we're looking at. When we switch to the composite view, we're looking at everything between the two yellow curves as a composite image, and we could define the range, the field of view, by grabbing the circles on the corners and dragging them inwards or outwards. And when we want to switch back to our slice view, we could do that as well. We press the composite image again, and we jump back to our slice view. Now every view, the top right box in every view allows you to maximize the view to take up your entire screen. Okay, you press it once and enlarges it to take up your screen, and you press it again and it brings it back to where it was previously. By default, like I said, we're looking at a 1 millimeter slice. If we wanted to look at thinner slices or thicker slices, we could change that by clicking the second button from the top of the view. That's our distance, and we're able to change that. One more point before we go on. I'm going to jump backwards a little bit because I forgot to mention that the layout of the screen is also changeable. Okay, so first of all, you could grab any of the borders and change the particular size of the views, or you could change the entire layout as well from the drop-down list that we have here. Right now, we're looking at implant tangential 5, meaning that we're seeing the tangential view as well, and we're looking at 5 cross-section slices. But it could be switched to 3 cross-section slices, or other views such as tabs, which will take up the entire screen, and then it will show us the different tabs running across the bottom left, and we could flip through those tabs. I think most dentists work with either the implant tangential 5 or 3, but whatever changes you make, the software will remember your settings. You open it next time, we'll open it with the next settings, with the same settings, and it will remember your preferences and how you like using the software. So that's just a word regarding the screen layout. Now, you can also notice that every view has a picture of a camera next to it. And what that does is it will take a screenshot of that particular view and it will put it into your screenshot basket. We're going to discuss a bit later about the screenshot and report generation functionality. There's a great functionality built into the software, allows you to PDF, include drilling report information, include CT scan reports, and a whole bunch of other things, which we're going to get to in just a bit. The cross-section view, let's go to the tangential view in the top right. The tangential view as well could be enlarge to take up the screen with the top button. The second button is our screenshot camera button. And here we could go through the slices as well using the slider, scrolling through the wheel of our mouse, or by pressing the up-down arrows by the slider. And the mouse functionality works the same way. If we widen our range of view in the axial, then we can see how it affects the tangential view and the cross-section view by controlling the width of the slice. Jumping to our axial view we said is stacked like a deck of cards. It's a horizontal slices. We have the ability to enlarge it. We have different viewing modes that you're able to choose from within the axial view. You could control which indicators are visible in the view. And you can also take a screenshot of the view and add it to your basket. Our cross-sections view on the top left, we mentioned is vertical slices. As we go through the slider, we could watch how the multicolor lines in the axial view and in the panoramic view are moving. That's showing you the location of the slices, of the 5 slices that we're viewing. The leftmost colorful line corresponds to the top left image, the rightmost to the bottom right, and the ones in between correspond to the ones in between. Now the same is true when we run through the axial view. You watch how the blue line in the panoramic, the bottom right view, and the cross sections to the top left view moves with you to show you the location of the slice that you're viewing. The green line that we have here controls our tangential view, and it's the same thing. It's showing you the exact angle at which you're viewing the tangential view. And we can watch, as we roll through the tangential view, we can watch how the green line moves accordingly as well. Our cross sections, we can enlarge it to take up the screen. We can control the distance between the slices. Right now it's 1 millimeter thickness. And the camera allows you to save the screenshots. You have the option of save screenshots that are currently being visible, or save screenshots for all positions, which will run around the panoramic curve and save all the screenshots along the curve. Our 3D view is our view on the bottom left. Here, the difference with the mouse functionality is that the left button allows you to grab and to rotate the image. Okay, just to remind you, the left button in the other views, the colorful lines jump to that location. The other views adjust themselves accordingly. There's no need for that in the 3D view, so it allows you to grab and to rotate. Another way of rotating is by pressing the second button from the top, and you could choose the orientation, and it updates the 3D view accordingly. The third button that we have here is for volume rendering. We have different presets, different ways of viewing the 3D view built into the software. It's just a matter of actually different ways of visualizing. The surfaces view on the bottom, you could think of as the actual volume, the actual original view, and the other ones are just different volume rendering techniques of viewing the surfaces, and we'll discuss that a bit more later. The fourth button here allows you to show which indicators are visible in the 3D view. Right now we have the cross-section indicator. So as we run through the cross-section slices, we could see the indicator moving, and we could turn that off and operate the software without it as well. The bottom button, again, is our screenshot button to add the screenshots to the basket. Now, the way the software works, is it works with panels. Okay, the panels you can think of as a control panel for the functionality you're using at the time. You could see a long list of the panels that we have here. If you press on a panel, then it opens it on the right-hand side. The panel could be closed by hitting the X button. Another way of accessing a panel is by double-clicking on the item you want the panel to open for. So if you double-click on an implant, the implant panel will open. If you double-click on the surface of the CT scan, the surfaces panel is going to open. And we're going to see, when we discuss more functionality, we're going to see how the panels could be used and how they control different functionality. Do you guys have any questions?
Nope, not yet.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, let's discuss placing an implant and how to go about doing that. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, let's discuss drawing a nerve and how to do that, because if you're planning a mandibular case, obviously you want to have the nerves marked and indicated, because that's going to affect your implant placement. The way to add a nerve is by pressing the plus button here with the squiggly line with the nerve. Now the toolbar is broken down into different sections, just so you know. The items with the plus are to add or create a new one, add an implant, add a nerve, add a virtual tooth, and this is if you want to recreate your panoramic. And then it looks like we have almost the same exact buttons repeated without the plus, and that's just there to toggle different things on and off. It doesn't delete it, it just hides it if something's interfering with your field of view. For example, if we want to get rid of the lines, the indicators, we could just press this button and they disappear from the screen. We press it again and it comes back onto the screen. Okay. The question just came in regarding importing the DICOM images. Yeah, I'm just going to review that very quickly because I see that a whole bunch of people joined a few minutes late. So I'm going to go back and review those settings very quickly. To start a new case is File, New Project. It will be a review for everybody else. Here you have the shortcut buttons to navigate to your computer. You could select either a zipped folder that containing DICOMS or a folder containing the DICOMS or the DICOMS themselves. Any of those would work. The software will also search within the directory to see if there's multiple DICOM sets. And you could also load the zipped without even unzipping it. You could just select it, press OK, and load it up. Okay, every CT scanner could save the DICOMS, so you could load images from every CT scanner. Whatever DICOM sets are found will appear here horizontally. Right now we found one in a particular folder. You take the one that you want, you could double click it, and it gets loaded into the software. Okay, here you could rotate the patient if they're misaligned. You could grab any of the borders and drag them inwards to affect your field of view. You want to focus in on the relevant area, and then you press the OK button. Okay, and now we're back to where we were. The panoramic curve, again, is here automatically. It's placed by the software. That's new functionality of an intelligent automatic panoramic curve. We discussed the different views. We discussed the mouse functionality. We discussed a bit about the panels. And now we're going to move on to drawing the nerve and then to placing implants. So to draw the nerve, first of all, you want to be able to see the nerve in the 2D view. Okay, the two tools that you have at your disposal is by going through the different slices. And it's okay if we see part in one slice and part in another slice. That's fine. And as we go through the slices, you could see the yellow curve in the axial view is moving, showing you the location of the slice that you're on. The other tool that we have is to fine-tune the placement of the panoramic if need be, grabbing any of the squares and dragging the squares. And you can see as we drag it, you can see how our nerve in the panoramic view, the bottom right view, is becoming a bit clearer. Once we have the nerve visible in the panoramic view, we're going to go to the Add Nerve functionality. We go to our red pluses. We select the red plus for the nerve. The nerve panel opens up on the right-hand side, and we're able to start indicating the nerve. Okay, we place the dots along the canal. The software connects the dots and draws the nerve for us. We could flip through the slices while we're drawing the nerve, and we could continue drawing, and the software continues and connects the dots. Now, if you're drawing a second nerve, then you want to first make sure that you could see the nerve like we discussed. And then you're going to press the Add Nerve button. Now, it's important to press the Add Nerve button because otherwise you'll have one long nerve or one long indicator going across from one end of the screen to the other. So here it works in a similar manner. You go ahead and you press and you draw the curve, you draw the nerve, and the software connects the dots. And we could see the nerve showing up in our other views as well. And we could see it in our 3D view here as well. To delete a nerve, you press the red X next to it, and the nerve gets deleted. We also have the functionality to lock the nerve to make sure it doesn't get moved by accident. The reason it could get moved by accident is because if you want to fine-tune the placement, you could grab any of the nodes along the nerve, grab it, and move it. Now we could see in our 3D view, as we raise the density threshold, the slider going across the bottom, we raise the density threshold, we see less of the patient's anatomy. We only see the more dense anatomy, and that shows us the nerve that was drawn there. We're also able to see the nerve by going to our surfaces panel, double-click on the CT surface. It opens up the surfaces panel, and here we could change the transparency. I have to improve the nerve there, but you could change the transparency, and you could see the nerve as well. Okay, our nerve panel is back up. The open panels are able to be toggled between by clicking on the tabs. And here we're able to change the color of the nerve. We're able to change the width. And we're able to delete it like we mentioned earlier. Okay, so that's the functionality regarding drawing the nerve. Any questions or anything that you'd like me to review?
Nope, that makes sense.
Okay, great. So we're going to keep going. So that was the nerve functionality. We mentioned also the density threshold that's going across the bottom of the screen, and we could see how that affects what we're looking at in the 3D view, the amount of anatomy that's there. It's also a way of knowing how dense the different anatomy is. Okay, adding an implant is done by pressing the red plus with the implant button next to it. It's a good idea before doing that to define where you want to drop the implant. So the implant could be dropped into pretty much any view, and we're going to do it in the cross sections view. I think that's one of the main places that it's done, but it could be put into any view, and it could be modified after that. So we go ahead and press on the red implant button. It opens up our window for add new implants. In the software, we have libraries that are implants manufactured by Blue Sky Bio, which is also compatible with major systems such as Zimmer, Nobel, Astra, Straumann. So the library exists of all of those implants. You're able to select on the implant system that you want, the width of the implant in the bottom left, and then the particular implant that you want to be using. Make sure the orientation of the implant is correct by selecting the proper jaw. And then you're able to press OK and drop the implant in. which we'll do in 1 second. While I have this window open, I want to point out that you have the ability to add an implant, add an abutment. The abutment list that's shown to you is based on the implant that you've selected, so we'll show you the compatible abutments. And both for the implant and for the abutment, you're able to put in custom dimensions. So if you happen to be using a system that we don't have in the software, you could put in the implant dimensions and place the implant anyway. We also have the functionality to add a guide pin. This is often used, it's used to secure surgical templates in edentulous cases. If your surgical guide is fabricated for guide pins, or if you're treatment planning the case for guide pins, you could do that from here as well. So jumping back to our implants, we select the implant type, and then we press the OK button. We then go over to the slice where we want to drop the implant, and left click. The implant is dropped in. When an implant is clicked on, it becomes active, which means the other views adjust themselves accordingly to show us that implant. And we're able to fine-tune the placement of the implant by grabbing it with our left mouse button, and we're able to rotate it, as well. Okay, so the placement of an implant is pretty straightforward. We could go ahead and see our implant in our different views. We could fine-tune the placement. If you right-click on it, you have a drop-down menu. And this will also activate a lot of the functionality that we have in the implant panel that's on the right side of the screen now. So we'll take a look at both of them together. The Show ID option will show the number, the ID of the implant that's visible here. Often the dentist will give the tooth number. You could change the ID simply by double-clicking on it and changing it to whatever number you want, and it will show up on the screen. So that's our Show ID option. We could also hide or unhide the ID by clicking the checkbox here. Lock the implant is good once you finish the treatment planning. It's a good option. You can lock the implant to make sure that it's not moved by accident. It's also when you're fabricating or designing a guide, if you wanted to, then that's also important to lock the implants. Show Properties brings up the panel that we have on the right side. Add Abutment brings you back to the abutment screen where you could select an abutment that you want to add, and it's added to the treatment plan. Another way of doing that as well, we have the ability to replace the implant with a different implant on the right side in the implant panel by pressing the Replace button. You could replace or customize an abutment as well. And we're not going to discuss the bottom box. That is getting the settings ready in order to design and fabricate a guide. So we're not going to be discussing it in this webinar session. We will be discussing it in next week's training session. So that is the settings in terms of adding an abutment. We're also able to toggle on and off the abutment and the implant by checking and unchecking the boxes that we have in the top right. We have the ability to duplicate an implant. It creates two implants in the exact same location. You're then able to just drag one over and move it. You're able to align one implant with another implant. So if you want to create parallel implants, then that's a good option as well. Replace we discussed, remove we discussed. Visibility allows us to control what we're viewing and what we're not viewing. And deselect allows you to deactivate the implants as well. Okay, so that's our functionality regarding the implant. Just to discuss something about it, if you're using an angled abutment like we have in this case, you're able to, first of all, activate the implant, which turns on the widget in the 3D view. Once it's activated, you could just rotate it around itself, around the axis, until you're able to position the abutment in the location and angle that you want. We actually have the option built in here. If you right-click and choose Rotate Only Around Implant Axis, for exactly the situation, if you like the placement of the implant and abutment, you want to rotate it because of the angled abutment. You want to make sure that you don't accidentally move the implant. Then you choose Rotate Only Around Implant Axis, and the rotation in the widget now, you could see, only allows the rotation around the axis. Okay, so that is our implant functionality. I'm going to field some of the questions that are coming in here because I see the list is getting longer. The implant does show in the bottom right in the panoramic view. If you just have to be in the correct slice. Okay, so we could see as we're going through our slices, here's our implant, and it shows up there as well. We can also switch to the composite view that we discussed earlier, and then there we could see the entire implant because we're looking at a composite image of all the different slices. If you place two implants close together, then yes, we have built-in functionality that will tell you. So here we could demonstrate a couple different functionalities. First of all, to duplicate the implants that we mentioned earlier, you press, let's do it in our panoramic view. You could right-click on the implant, press duplicate, and now we have two implants that are on top of each other. And we could grab one implant. Let's turn off our cross lines for a second. We could grab one implant and drag it over from the other implant. One second. Let's switch to our curve in the maxilla. There we go. Now we have a much better panoramic view. Okay. I'm dropping the implant in here again. We have our implant diameters. We drop it in. And we go to duplicate. Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna have to check this functionality in our new build here, but what we see with the red with the red stop sign and exclamation mark is the indication that two implants are too close together. Let's drop another implant in. If we go to the panel for the implant validation, here we're able to see the default settings for the distance between the two implants. If it violates the settings, we have the exclamation mark showing up, and it tells us where the violation is. And if we want, we could go ahead and change and alter the settings for the minimums. And when we separate the implants to be larger than the minimum distance, the red stop signs with exclamation mark disappear and no longer show up on the implants. The functionality exists for a nerve as well. It could tell you if you're too close to a nerve, and again, that would be a nerve that's drawn into the software. Let's try this one more time here. Duplicate. Okay, here we go. The reason that wasn't working before is because I actually had the option that we demonstrated earlier of to rotate the implant around the axis only. So that prevented the implants from being moved and separated. When I deactivated that functionality, we have the ability to move the implants. And as we separate the implants, the red stops, the red exclamation mark disappears from the implants, and we're back in business. Okay, so that was the problem that we had the option of rotating around the axial only selected. That was preventing the implants from moving. Let's take a look at some of the other questions that came in here. Yes, if the implants are placed too close together, the software warns us. Regarding the DICOM dataset, you should ask for uncompressed DICOM images. The resolution should be around 0.2 millimeters apart. If you're using, or even more, it shouldn't be more than half a millimeter apart maximum. But if you export the DICOMs and save them from a CT scanner, you should be able to import them directly into the software. The drop-down menu on the bottom left affects our density threshold. It's very similar to moving the slider that we have on the bottom, but what this does is it jumps to presets that are programmed into the software. Okay, so there's no right or wrong, it's just a matter of what density threshold you want to be viewing things at. Now you're able to import an STL into the case. Once the treatment plan is done and you're ready for guide fabrication, then you can import the STL file, and we're going to discuss that a bit, and we're going to elaborate it much more next week when we're discussing guide fabrication. Okay, the software warns if you're too close to two implants, or if you're too close between an implant and a nerve, then the software validation comes up. Here we have the default distances to a nerve or between implants. If you want to change them, you could go ahead and change them, and the software will warn only based on the information that's entered. Okay. Let's discuss images and reports, something that we mentioned earlier, and we're going to touch upon it quickly. We can open up the screenshot panel either by going to our panel list and choosing screenshots, or by actually taking a screenshot and it puts it into the panel. Okay, we can see the images have been added to the panel. We could reorder them, we could remove them, we could remove all of them. We could add more. We could go ahead and add more to the basket, and we could put in all the images that we want. We also have the option of creating a drilling report or a CT summary report, which automatically populates the basket. The drilling report will populate the basket with all the slices that contain an implant in it. It'll automatically put those screenshots into the basket, and we can go ahead and create a drilling report with it. The CT summary report was designed primarily for reviewing a CT scan, or if a scan center wants to create a report for the dentist, then you could press the CT summary report. It will go around the arch and it will add the cross-section slices. It will add the panoramic and some other popular slices in order to review in order to review the CT scan. Now, once you have the slices that you want in the basket, you could save PDF or print them. Saving will ask you where you want to save it. You could choose a location on your computer, and it will put the different images from the basket into that location. The PDF option gives you options to create a nice PDF report. First of all, you could control the layout, how many images show up on a page. You could choose data to put into the header or the footer. Putting data in is very simple. You could put in patient name, the date time of the scan, the scanner model. You just select what you want, and it gets added to the header or to the footer. You could also change the size and the font of it. All the functionality is there. You could decide what data is going into the report itself. You could check and uncheck the boxes of data of information you want included. You could decide if you want to put in a list of the different implants. You could also include drilling depth when you're doing a guided surgical case. And you could also decide what title or what data you want on the image itself, where you want it to be in the top of the image or the bottom of the image, and the data will be put onto the image. Once you have the settings you like, you press the OK button, and the software creates the PDF report. Okay, you could save it, you could print it. All the options are there. So that's a nice way of documenting cases, of saving the data or information regarding the patient to another location, or printing the information. While we're talking about saving data, let's discuss some very important yet basic functionality of saving the treatment plan. Okay, the treatment plan could be saved just like you would save a Word or Excel file. You have Save Project and Save Project As. It will ask you where you want to save it on your computer. You simply give it the name, the location, and it's saved as the file. Now that file could be transferred, it could be shared with associates, or whatever you want to do. So that functionality to save as, works the same way as all the other Windows programs. The new project, like we demonstrated earlier, is to create a new project. An open project is if you already have a Blue Sky Bio, Blue Sky Plan file that you opened and saved, and now you want to open it again, then you go to Open Project, as opposed to New Project, which is there to load DICOM data. So that's important. We also have the option of Save Project Locked. If you want to share a treatment plan and you want to lock the implants to make sure nobody moves them, but not only do you want to make sure nobody moves them accidentally, you want to prevent the user from moving them at all, and you have Save Project Locked. It will save the treatment plan, and the software will prompt you to put a password in. And unless somebody has the password, they won't be able to move the implants. So that's a interesting and useful functionality as well. Okay. We're going to just touch on two more topics, and we're going to do each one briefly. One is virtual teeth, and the other one is importing the model. Okay, the virtual teeth could be added to the treatment plan by pressing the tooth with the red plus next to it. Here you have an option of either adding just crowns or adding teeth with roots. You could select the implant, you could select the virtual tooth that you want to add, press OK. Left click in any of the views, similar to an implant functionality, and to drop the tooth in place, and you could manipulate it and rotate it very similar to the way that you'd manipulate and rotate an implant. Excuse me. So that's in terms of that. Now we also improved the functionality recently. Oh, if you double click on the virtual tooth, then it opens up the virtual tooth panel as well. And we could see in the 3D view. We could see in the 3D view that you're able to manipulate it and move it with a similar widget to the implants. Here's a situation where we will lock our implants to make sure we're not moving it by accident. You know what, let's just delete it so it doesn't get in our way here. And we could go ahead and control the virtual tooth. Some functionality that we've added recently is you're able to change, when you add the virtual tooth, you could decide small, medium, and large, which is general sizes. But here you're able to actually change the length and the width of the virtual tooth as well by grabbing the nodes or the balls that are there and resizing and manipulating the virtual tooth. To delete if you right-click on the virtual tooth, you have different options, including locking and removing and replacing. Here and in the virtual tooth panel, you're able to add an implant to support the virtual tooth. Okay, so you could select the implant type, and the software will add it to the treatment plan to properly support the crown or the virtual tooth with the roots that you've placed. You could do similar functionality to align an existing implant to support it. You could control the transparency and other options that you have here. The functionality to align an implant or align a new implant basically means that you could treatment plan your case. Instead of treatment planning with implants, you could treatment plan with virtual teeth. You know, you place the virtual teeth in. Once you have the positioning that you like, then you're able to go ahead and align the implants automatically. Okay, there's a lot of questions here, and I don't know if we're going to get to all of them, but I'm available via phone or email afterwards that we'll be able to address whatever we don't finish with. So that's our virtual tooth functionality. Oh, another important functionality that we have is you could place multiple virtual teeth at the same time. This is also something new that we've added recently. You can multi-select by holding down the Shift key. Select what you want to add. The bright red one is going to indicate the placement of the virtual teeth. Wherever you left-click in the software, the bright red tooth is going to be placed there, and the other ones are going to be placed accordingly. Okay, so here we could see the virtual teeth were all added, and each one, if you want to fine-tune the placement or fix it, could be done individually. Okay, so that sums up our virtual teeth functionality, and we're going to discuss importing a model. There isn't an option to automatically place the virtual tooth other than what we just saw, but once it's placed, if you want to fine-tune the placement, you could use the widget, or you could change and rotate it in any of the views, just like you could do with an implant. Okay. I'm going to go on to importing the model, and if we have time and interest at the end, I'll be able to field some more of the questions. I'm going to switch to a different treatment plan that we have here that has a model. Just checking that we have the model here. Okay. First of all, if we double-click, as we mentioned earlier, we double-click on the surface, it opens our surfaces panel. Here we see both the CT scan surfaces and we see the STL imported models. There's other functionality here as well. We're not going to be able to go into everything in detail, but you're able to cut, for example, either the model or the CT data. So if you wanted to remove parts that are unnecessary, you could do that. If you have two jaws that are open a little bit or different parts of the anatomy and you want to isolate and keep only one of them, then you can just press isolate and click on what you want to keep, and everything else will disappear. So that's some good functionality as well. And you could play around with it, and if there are any questions, check out the videos, help file, or contact us with questions. But I want to get to the model import. The model is primarily imported after the treatment plan is completed, and if you're going to be having a guide fabricated, in the model, a stone model, which it's really an optical scan of a stone model, is imported into the treatment plan, either by you or by the lab, or the center that's fabricating the guide, and it's put into the software. So how do we go about? Let's delete the model that we have here. Let's hide our implants and everything else. Here's our density threshold. We could demonstrate the isolate functionality quickly. Okay, so if we use isolate, click isolate, and then click on what we want to keep, then we can see how everything else is removed from the screen. Okay, so that's a good functionality to use when you're aligning a model. And generally, it's recommended to scan the patient with their mouth open, even if it's just ever so slightly. You could still see the occlusion of the teeth, but this way allows you to segment different parts of the CT effectively. To import the model, you go to File, Import STL Model. You navigate to where the STL file is. And the software, as we could see, throws the STL file into the treatment plan. The best way to align it is the following, and this is important. The best way to align it, first of all, you want to make sure you're in Surfaces presets. That's going to give you the best way to align. And then you're going to switch to Points and press the Align button. Now what it's going to do, it's going to open for us both the CT scan and the model scan side by side. We're going to identify points that we could see clearly in both of them, and based on the points, the software is going to do the merge. Yes, you could use an intraoral scan or a digital impression. That's not a problem, as long as it's in STL file format. So if you're getting an intraoral scanner or using one, in order to import it into the software, it needs to be able to save as an STL file. Okay. Here you're able to use your mouse functionality that we discussed. You could rotate, you could zoom in, you could zoom out, you could grab it, you could rotate it. Here's the model. I should, if I was doing this, if this was a real case and I had more time right now, I'd probably hit cancel, raise the density threshold a bit more to better define our teeth for us and to have clearer points. But this is fine for now as well. So what we want to do is we want to put down at least 5 points in locations that we can identify clearly in both of them. We want to disperse them, mesial, distal, buccal, lingual. We want to disperse them as well as we can. And the more points, the better. So although we were saying 5, that 5 is the minimum, you shouldn't hesitate to add in extra points. The more the points are placed and the better well-defined the points are, the better the curve, the better the merge is going to be. Okay, the order of the points doesn't matter. We could go ahead and we could put 3 points here, and then we could go ahead and find the location here as well, and we could put the points here. Again, you want to put the points, you want to disperse them, and the more accurately you place them, the more points you place, the better the merge is going to be. You press the OK button, and the software does the merge. Now, how do you check if the merge is good? The best way to check if the merge was done well is in the 2D views. Okay, you have model outline selected, and now we could see an outline of the model in the 2D views. You want to check in the areas where there are teeth. because where there are no teeth, there's going to be a discrepancy logically because the model is showing us the soft tissue and gingiva as well, and the CT scan may not. So you could run around the curve, and we could look in the cross-sections view, and we could see how tightly the model is around the teeth. Okay, and I'm going to jump to the other side, and we're going to check that as well, and we could see it here. We could also check in the axial view. As you get closer to the occlusion, you want to see again that the line, that it's wrapping around the teeth very tightly, as we see now. Now, if you see a discrepancy, the first thing you should do is redo the points. Go back in, put down more points, spend more time placing them accurately, and better distribute them. Okay, that should solve the problem. A merge shouldn't take more than 3 minutes or 5. Let's say if it's more complicated than 5 minutes. But you want to find points that are clearly defined. If there's scatter or soft tissue that's interfering with the CT scan, then look for points that you could see that don't have interference. Another idea is also to raise the density threshold of the patient's CT so that you're just seeing the teeth. Okay, that's a little too much. You're just seeing the teeth. You don't need, for the merge, you don't need anything else. If it's an edentulous case, then there's a different protocol. The patient should probably be wearing a CT scan at the time of the CT. If it's not an edentulous case and the patient has some teeth, then there's no need for a CT scan unless it's a very high scatter case with a lot of metal. But most cases are fine with just the model. The merge is done after the treatment plan is prepared, and then it could be used for fabricating a guide. And we're not going to go into guide fabrication now. We have there's another training session scheduled for next week at the same time that's going to focus on guide fabrication. It's going to discuss both of our protocols, the digitally designed surgical guide as well as the model with posts that gets printed, and you can do a vacuum press or thermoplast on top of that to make the surgical guide. So that is the import process. Another way to fine-tune the placement of the model, let's say you do the points again, you do it accurately, and you're still not happy with the placement. So a new existing functionality allows you to first of all grab the model from the arrows and drag it and rotate it similar to an implant. A new functionality that we just put in is you could click on the blue circle, which represents the center of the model, and then use the arrows on your keyboard to move it almost pixel by pixel. You could move and fine-tune the placement, refine the placement on a very, very, very fine level. So, and you could watch as well as how the model outline moves in the 2D views, which is probably the best way to do it. If you want to slightly, ever so slightly, fine-tune the positioning, click the blue circle, use the arrows, and watch the 2D view in the area of the teeth, and you could see how that gets modified. We also have some other more advanced importation functionality that allows you, first of all, to change the point of rotation. Right now it rotates around the middle. When you use the green circle, it will rotate around the middle of the model. If you use the little arrows, then you can move the whole widget over and change the point of rotation. So if one side is properly aligned, then you can rotate it around that side and just have a different axle of rotation. If you're importing a second DICOM, then you could use functionality such as adjust model as align to model. That's what I was looking for. That will automatically align one model based on another model. So if we have a second model, for example, that has the missing teeth here, and we want to import it, we could press the import button, press align to model, and it will align it to the existing model as well. So that's really the model importation process. To summarize it, You go to points, you go to align, you disperse the points, mesial, distal, buccal, lingual. The more points, the better. The more accurate, the better. And then you'll have a good merge. Okay, I am going to start answering some questions. If you have questions, type them in. And Gloria and Michael, if you guys have any questions or if you want me to review anything, then go ahead and speak up. Comment footnote here, this is the first time that we're actually having this type of webinar or training session that we have people who are attending and are able to actually share their screen or to speak and be heard. And we're doing these lunch video training tutorials with this format. And I think it provides a better way of training and making sure that everything's understood, because if there are questions, it's easier to answer them. So if you're interested in being in the presentation, in one of the future ones, then you could email us and we'll try to arrange that. There is a maximum, so if there are too many people, then we have to not allow everybody in. Okay, regarding drawing the nerve, I'm going to jump back to answer a question that came in. There are two ways really to fine-tune the placement of the nerve. First of all, you have to make sure your panoramic curve is drawn based on the mandible, and you have to switch back to there. And while we're doing this, I'll demonstrate the functionality of drawing your own panoramic curve. We said that you could modify the panoramic curve by grabbing the squares and dragging them, and that's one of the ways to accentuate the nerve. But another way of drawing the curve, if you wanted to draw your own or define a custom, go ahead and click on this button here. You place dots around the curve. The software creates the panoramic. When you get to the end, you could double click, and that's how the nerve's created. In terms of finding the nerve, you could do it by grabbing the squares and fine-tuning the placement of the panoramic, or you could also just flip through your slices in the panoramic view, which I would do first, and then if you can't find it in your slices, then to modify the actual panoramic curve. Here it is. Okay, and like we said and demonstrated before, you could start. This panoramic image is good for starting to draw the nerve. You can actually see most or all of it. And when you flip through to the next slice, you can continue drawing it, and you see it the continuation of it more clearly. Right now, you can't actually create a surgical guide based on the virtual teeth. It's something that we're discussing or thinking about. But you could place multiple virtual teeth. Everything that you see in the 3D view could be saved to an STL file and exported from the software. Okay, you need the export functionality for that, and we're not going to discuss that now. That's more of the focus of next week's webinar. But just so you know that everything that's visible in the 3D view, the model, the patient, the implants, the abutment, everything could be exported. The virtual teeth, everything could be exported potentially to STL. It's not recommended to make a surgical guide based on the CT scan. Okay, it's recommended to do it based on a model scan. There are two reasons for that. One is there are a couple of reasons for that, more than two. One is there's no scatter in the model. And connected to that is that there's no density threshold regarding STL files. For the CT scan, we could see how you could change the CT scan threshold, and it changes the shape of the anatomy. So the question is always there, am I working on exactly the correct density threshold? The CT scan is kind of like shades of gray. It's not black and white, it's shades of gray. The STL model, the optical scan, is black and white. Either it's there or it's not there. The shape is very clearly defined, and the resolution of an optical scan is higher and the resolution of a CT scan, so you're going to end up with a more accurate and better fabricated surgical guide. So for those three reasons, no scatter, better resolution, and no question about the density threshold, we highly recommend only fabricating it based on the model and not based on a CT scan alone. If anybody has further questions or wants to be contacted, please shoot me an email to plan@blueskybio.com, and we can follow up from there. If you have questions in general, I'm reachable at plan@blueskybio.com, or the support phone numbers that are available on the Blue Sky Bio website. We have in the panoramic view, we have the composite button to address a question that came in that shows us a composite image of everything between the inner and the outer curve within the field of view. And that looks more like your traditional X-ray. You could toggle back and forth between the views by using the composite and slice button that we have here. Okay, the subsampling type, I'm not going to get into that now. It's different qualities and resolutions that the DICOMS could be imported at. Unless you have a reason not to use max, unless your computer can't handle it, then go ahead and use max, and that's it. Okay, I know I ran through a bunch of different topics, some of them more advanced and some of them less advanced, but at least this should provide a base that you could go ahead and play with the software, try cases out, use the functionality, and you should have a strong basis for doing that now. If you want further assistance, we mentioned earlier, there's a very detailed help file in the software at Help Show Help. There's video training tutorials on our website. There's also recorded webinars. This one's going to be recorded. This one's being recorded as well. And you can contact me with any questions or to schedule a time to go through the software together. We have a whole bunch of webinars coming up. Some of them are being given by me on how to use the software. The next one is on how to design surgical guides. We also have some being given by labs on CT scan analysis, all on treatment planning, a whole bunch of interesting topics and information on our Blue Sky Bio website could be seen from there. Okay, I think we're not only out of time, but we've ran over significantly. Gloria and Michael, do you guys have any questions at this point?
I do not. That was great, Michael. Thank you.
Okay. Gloria, are you still with us? Gloria? Okay. Anyway, I'd like to thank everybody for attending. Please check out our website, contact us with questions, and we look forward to hearing from you and being in touch.